All right, everyone. We are here for another great show. I am Marwan Cameron, and this is The Conduit. And as you know what time it is the best hour of your day and probably your week too. It is Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces with our special guest, Mark Boatwright-Frost. Mark, how are you doing today, sir?
I am awesome.
I
And
am
yourself?
Groot. That's what that made me think of.
Yeah, I'm just eating well. Went for a walk on Monday. Went up to Dickerson Falls. Been doing a lot of really good work in between. And I will have the June conduit calendar updated today and up
Woo-hoo.
on Facebook tomorrow.
Awesome. I appreciate that. You notice I was busy at work last night. Adding a June is like jam packed.
And
Jam.
it's not going to get lighter. It's going to get better. And we have this little thing coming up in June on the 23rd. I think we should do a shout out for it.
Oh, facts for sure. What's happening on the 23rd?
That would be the barbecue at Viewcrest Village.
Whoop whoop. Yep, there you go.
And we're going to be hosting a barbecue for up to 300 people here.
All right, and tell everyone again, what is that date on that?
It is June 23rd from 4 to 6:30. G2 and Resilient Ecosystems will be slinging burgers and talking to people about community and getting the neighbors to know each other.
There you go. So that is June 23rd. I'm going to put that in the chat there so everyone can have that. June 23rd from 4 to 6:30, did you say?
Yep. And the
Oh,
wonderful Stephanie will be out there cooking and making wonderful food.
well, it's going to take a whole team for that. It won't just be Stephanie. It'll be a whole horde of people to make that happen for
That
sure.
is true, but I want to give a shout out to Stephanie because she is so awesome.
Well, shout them all out.
Yep.
I'll sit here while
Kendra, Cherry, Stephanie, Rob, Monkey.
Cherry, Sabrina,
Yep.
Keyshawn. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of folks that make that happen. So that
Yeah.
is, which really, honestly, has a lot to do with this whole thing here, right? Is bringing your puzzle piece together. You cannot do it alone. You should not try to do it alone. It takes a village. I know that some people don't like that term because of where it comes from or who repeats it, right? But
Yeah.
it really
Well,
does.
she did not originate that. Let's just put it that way. That's been around for much longer than she has.
Yes, that is true. That is true. And what are we calling this event? It changes names in my mind.
Right now, it's just a community outreach event. And we just go out to the community and we have conversations with people and we get people to have conversations with each other. At your barbecue, we actually got a whole bunch of people together talking about gardening and putting together a proposal for a local landowner to use his land. And we're moving forward one step after the other for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this one will be at the Viewcrest Village. Sorry.
Right behind the preschool. Right there's a parking lot right behind the preschool is a basketball court. That's where we'll be setting up.
Yeah, this one is going to be our most ambitious one yet, as there are 300 units in there. And if you figure, most units have at least probably 2 or more people in there.
Yep.
There's probably easily a good 1,500 people in that. Well, that might be too high. There might be at least a good 1,000 people or so in there. So,
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to take us all. So everyone get ready for that day. We're going to have a good time. Definitely looking forward to it. Hopefully we have a really great sunny day on that day. And I love it. This is a great opportunity to meet new people and fellowship and build community. And yeah, it's just awesome. So go ahead.
And I do want to give a shout out to anybody who wants to volunteer to hand out flyers. We're going to be doing that on Sunday.
Okay.
So if folks want to show up here around noon on Sunday, we will have a stack of flyers and we will be marking. They're already clips on doors for flyers to get put. So basically, you just have to go down the neighborhood and put flyers under the clips so that people can get invited.
Where do you want them to meet you?
At 1585 Actually, it's probably easier just to do it behind the preschool where we're going to be doing the barbecue.
For those that might want to volunteer but don't live there, have no idea.
Okay, so if you go down Almera between Sylvan and God, I don't know what the next one down is, but if you turn on Almera and you go down, you'll see a sign for a preschool to your right. If you pull into the driveway, the parking lot there's a basketball court behind the preschool. We will be there at noon with flyers.
All right. I'll ask Mark to send some information out so I can kind of put that out in the shows from now until Sunday. Absolutely. It takes a lot of effort to knock on 300 doors. 299 since your door doesn't need to be knocked on.
You don't have to knock on them. All you have to do is put the flyer up on them.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Well, man, it seems like a really good opportunity to meet folks.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of people will come out and say hi to you while you're doing it.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting neighborhood with a mix of people. So knocking on people's doors might get you all kinds of reactions around here. So putting the flyers up, which is a common thing around here, is much easier in a lot of ways. But we're also going to be putting it out through the office here as well.
All right. Shout out to Tom there, manager of that property.
And Tim, Jesse, and Mike.
Tim, Jesse, and Mike.
Who run maintenance here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it would probably take a team there, right, to run such a huge complex there. So that should be a lot of fun. There has been a challenge issued, so we may even do like a one-on-one basketball since we're going to be right there on the court. Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. Definitely come on out. Should be really fun. Good afternoon there, Mr. Dent. How are you doing today? All right. Sounds like we're coming through loud and clear. So why don't we jump into it?
So we're going to be talking about the Kitsap Resiliency Project because both of us realized that we haven't. And that's, kind of a crime considering that you're on the board of Resilient Ecosystems and that we are building this together, and all of the picnics and barbecues and outreach are basically to bring people together for the Kitsap Resiliency Project.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and we'll launch into the conversation about that. Marwan, who owns the Kitsap Resiliency Project?
Nobody owns the Kitsap Resiliency Project.
You mean you don't own it? G2 doesn't own it?
Nope, not at all.
Not at all. Then who does own the Kitsap Resiliency Project?
Well, your favorite term, we the people.
Yep.
It is for the community. It is for the county.
And so all of our outreach is to people and businesses and organizations building a coalition to bring people together and make a better future. And I know that sounds vague, but right now we're dealing with the edges of a jigsaw puzzle. Mm-hmm. And the jigsaw puzzle is a framework for the edges of the jigsaw puzzle are a framework for what our future could be like. And I think universally we can all agree that our future right now isn't all that great. And our reality right now isn't all that great. And I'm going to sidestep right now into a conversation Marwan and I and Rob have been having behind the scenes. That, 2 weeks ago, we talked about Mad Max versus Star Trek and the dystopian versus the future. But it's kind of interesting because right now we're very much in a talk about Star Wars versus Star Trek. Mm-hmm. And Marwan and I kind of came to the agreement the other day that Star Wars is very much a mirror of who we are now. We feel like we have an authoritarian government over us, if not in the United States, elsewhere. That we have limited resources, limited use, and that people aren't engaged in making a difference, and that we're in constant conflict. So when you think about that, that's kind of like where we are now. And Star Wars or Star Trek is more of, okay, we need to get over this nonsense, get out of our own way, and create a human future that uses resources wisely, isn't authoritarian, and allows people to become the best versions of themselves. Mm. Now, I know that Star Trek spends a lot of time on spaceships with missiles and photon torpedoes and everything, but the reality of what Gene Roddenberry wrote was about a Earth that got out of their own way, that created sharing resources, that created lifting people up and giving them the resources to be able to grow. And
Well, Michael says, is it really limited resources or unattainable resources? I think that's a great question.
yeah, well, it depends on how would they be unattainable, Michael? I need clarity there. Anyway,
Well,
in
my
this
thought
case,
on that, let's stay on here just for a second while he
okay,
types in there. My thought on that when I see that is that, again, we talk about being the richest nation in the history of nations. We should be able to afford, or everyone should be housed. Everyone should have health care, right? No one
everybody
should
should
be
have
hungry.
education.
So it's like we have the resources, but they're unattainable because we don't have access to them. So that's how I interpret Michael's statement. But yes, Michael, if you
Okay,
want to
that
discuss
fair,
all
a fair statement. And okay, so hard to access example funds for okay. Um, so if you've read Ishmael, I'm going to be quoting Daniel Quinn here. Is he said that we a long time ago, many thousands of years ago, we came up with the brilliant idea of locking up the food for security, and then managed to take over everybody around, and continue to acquire and acquire. Going back to Star Trek for a moment, much like the Borg, they assimilated everybody
that.
and started locking up the resources, more and more resources. So a very few managed most of the resources. If you look at a straight line from there to now, you can see how it just progressed into the what Quinn calls the taker culture. And so, yes, they are hard to access, and we have to get by the taker culture to be a human culture. That's kind of the argument, and that's the argument Gene Roddenberry made. We need to uplift people. When you hear the term Star Trek economy rolled around, it is an egalitarian economy that uplifts everybody, and we get beyond wars because we're not fighting for resources. We get to a place where we work together, coordinate, and collaborate, and create a future. So when we go back to the jigsaw puzzle, we have a lot of choices to make. There are a lot of places we could go with it. We can continue to do what we've been doing all the way along. And Alcoholics Anonymous has a definition of insanity that says doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. And I think what we need to do is take a more diverse look at what the future can be. And for that, we need people to come to the table and speak their truth. The more of truth that we have, the more commonalities we will find, and the way that we can come together and set priorities. You can't, which you can, I can go set priorities right now for everybody, but I don't think everyone's going to be happy with the priorities I set. But if we bring voices to the table and we hear the voices and start seeing commonalities, we can start arranging priorities in an order of need that makes more sense and services more people.
So let me ask you a question. In your Star Trek analogy here, right? Unfortunately, World War III had to happen in order for that Star Trek economy to grow into existence, right?
Right.
Humanity realized this isn't going to work, and collectively they said we're going to do something else. So,
But it was written in 1963, which is on the Cold War.
right. So
Uh,
my question is
so,
this. My question
and
is this.
so this is a little different time, and we have a different option.
I don't know if we do. That's why I want to finish my question. My question is this: are we so far gone, right? I mean, we can come together now, right? But it feels like there's so much stuff that is already on the rails. Like the train has left the station and it's 50 stops down. That we
And the
are
tracks are out.
we are trying to build for what's going to happen after, right? I mean, we're looking at the conflict in Ukraine and Russia as an example, right? This doesn't seem to be uh, being resolved, and it looks like it can continue to escalate. And we can pick a conflict, right? I mean, that's how we were talking about Star Wars and Star Trek versus Mad Max.
Right.
So, are we building now? And is that important now for the Kitsap Resiliency Project to be resilient for the what if, right? The
Exactly.
and the writing may be written on the wall. We may have to deal with that, but we need to come together now and not after, right? It's going to be so
Right.
much harder to pick up the pieces. We're going to lose so many more loved ones needlessly if we can find a way to come together now. Is that or what are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
it's a little darker than I paint it, but yeah, exactly. I mean, we have so many things on the table. Um, I mean, climate change. ASDA, the wholly owned subsidiary of Walmart, put a sustainability report together in 2015, and they realized that 95%, that was a 95% of their food resources were at risk due to climate change.
95%?
95%.
Wow.
Which means that there could be a great deal of hungry European people because they import a lot of their food from other places. Um, and Syria, the civil war in Syria, and a lot of people don't realize this, but if you go and actually read the history of the Syrian civil war, it started because farmers didn't have water and they went to the government to try and fix the problem. And Syria is a hellhole right now because the government didn't respond to the farmers, and they ended up with a civil war on their hands that is escalated into something much worse because they basically had a warming desertification crisis from climate change that essentially ended their ability to grow food. The same thing happened in Mexico in the 90s and is continuing on with desertification, where the state of Chihuahua lost 80% of their agriculture, and they had a huge out migration, which created the crime rate in Juarez.
Mm.
So we're seeing out migration due to desertification, due to climate change already. And I want to go back and note historically, Syria was the breadbasket. It was called the Fertile Crescent, and
Mm.
now it's a desert. So things are changing. And if we don't come together, we don't pool our resources, we don't figure out how to learn different skills and share skills, um, it's just going to be ugly. And that's just climate change, which is happening and is irreversible at this point. But we can mitigate the worst of it if we get together and start moving. And nobody is moving. So it's up to us to do it locally.
So tell us more about the Kitsap Resiliency Project. No one owns it, right? It's for
Right.
the people, right?
So the people who bring their pieces are essentially going to own the project. And I'm in my more hard and cold statements of things, those who show up make the choices.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened to create the culture, the taker culture we have now. People showed up and made some decisions, and 15,000 years later, we're in this situation where we have a lack of access to resources. We have a continual crisis, one right after the other. And the only way to really counter this is to come together locally and build local communities, one neighborhood at a time, which goes back to why we're doing the barbecues is we're looking for community ambassadors to bring their pieces of the puzzle and to engage their community and their neighborhoods in a discussion about who each other is. But first we have to get out of our own way and stop being afraid of our neighbors.
Mm. Okay. So getting away from it being a zero-sum game, right? If I
Yeah,
win, you lose, and if you lose, I win, or vice
right.
versa.
How about if everybody wins? And that's a real possible outcome. But that requires us of coming together and finding out what winning means. And I think that if you find out, you have a conversation. And I used to make this joke: you can find common ground with anybody if you dig deep enough. And it might be a lemonade recipe. It might be something that simple, but you don't know until you have the conversation. And if you let one thing the other person believes in stop you from having a conversation, you're never going to figure out what you have in common.
Mm. Mm.
We need to get out of our own way.
You want me to pull up the Resilient Communities Thrive while we're having this conversation so people have a visual?
I'm sure
Okay.
it's so resilient communities thrive because we oh, okay, this visual. All right, because essentially With a network neighborhood, I bet you in your neighborhood you have somebody who's a healthcare professional or a trained medic or something. There are enough people around who are EMTs or CPR qualification, military, that are there. So how valuable would that be if a disaster happened? Is knowing who your neighbors were. I bet you there's somebody in your neighborhood that can work on engines.
Mm.
I bet you there's bunches of people in your neighborhood who are into gardening. Wouldn't it be great if everybody worked together and went back to the old phone tree idea that if something happened, we know who to go to? Sorry, what did Michael say?
I said, how do we break through to people that are dead set on hate or dislike of the other people, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual preference? That's an excellent question.
Okay, so I will answer this way, Michael, and I'm sorry to be. We just don't have more than an hour, and we burn that hour very quickly here. But if you go, do you have the Patreon link,
Put it
Marwan?
in the chat there.
Okay, so there's a Patreon link that Marwan's put up for the next 7 or 8 days. You can download a book called the Resilient Community Handbook for free from Patreon. I put it up there so that people can download it and read it. It addresses all of those issues I think, pretty clearly. If it's not clear, go ahead and email me and let me know what was unclear to you so I can adjust it in the next draft.
So, Mark, why don't you go ahead and type it in the private chat, and I'll paste it, and then I'll give my answer to this question also. So, my thought on that, Michael, is just what we're doing. I think sometimes we're so far behind, and we feel like we need to hurry up and catch up, right? That it's like we wanna make big leaps because we need to, right, by necessity. But we actually have to stop, I believe, and really get back to the basics. And it seems so simple to say, hey, you know what, we're going to do a barbecue, or we're going to try to do a meet and greet and get to know each other. And that's why, Mark is sharing the examples of maybe it's a lemonade recipe, right? I mean, you've just got to drill it back to the basics and find that common ground and then build from that, right? When we did the first neighborhood barbecue in my neighborhood, I didn't know more than probably good 80% of my neighbors. And because my neighborhood is a lot smaller, one, I knocked on every door and handed out the flyers. So that let them know who I was, right? Some people had seen me driving past the house or whatever the case may be. But now they had a face to, a voice to who I was and to what I was about. And that immediately melted, their opinions of me from a distance, right? And they saw that I didn't want anything. I wasn't asking for anything. I was actually trying to give something. And so there were folks that couldn't come and, came and donated food to the event. People that were telling me that they were looking forward to it up until the event happened. People that still thank me now and wave at me and speak to me that weren't speaking before. And that's a huge first step. And it seems minuscule in the face of all the stuff that we're facing and all the conflict and the divisiveness. But that's what has to happen, in my humble opinion on that.
And remember that the divisiveness is based on fear that's pumped at us to keep us in a taker culture.
Mhm.
And we oh God, I'm about to take it. Every week I have one that I roll my eyes and go, oh my God, I'm going to say something that's going to get me trashed.
Look, you can stop now. You don't have to do it.
I do, though, because we've been having this conversation in the background for a while. I'm going to say, I don't say that this is right or wrong, but it's a thought that I've been having, and I want to share that thought. And, my own daughter, when she was in high school, came to me and said she is pan. And I had to find out what that was. And I have, we have all the gender pronouns and we have all of the different ways that people call each other. And I wonder if in some way, and this is again an intellectual exercise for me trying to figure out how things fit together, and this is how we do the work that we do, is we ask questions that are uncomfortable and that could get us what is cancel cultured and everything else. But the question I ask is, aren't we othering ourselves when we do that? when we put all of these categories and put ourselves in boxes, are we not othering ourselves in a culture that others us anyhow and tries to keep us separate? And I'm not saying that we are, but it's a question I'd like to spend a little time discussing with people and see what other people's insights on that are. Because I wonder about that. I tend to lean toward thinking of everybody as a human being and not categorizing them. And I find that works for me to keep my ability to be open to people. Um,
Well, see, on the other side of it, then, I also want to be seen in a certain way. And so what's important to you is
exactly, but
what the
that's why I think that's why there has to be a discussion around it. Because in a society where we're othered all the time, are we in danger of othering ourselves? And I'm not saying we are or we aren't, but it's a question I have that I'd kind of like to think about a little bit more.
I think
I want
that
to honor
would be.
somebody's identification. I do. I want to honor somebody's identification, whatever that happens to be. But I'm wondering about the overall cultural frameworks effects on that. So
Yeah, I think that might be like a 2-hour workshop on that. But that would be a fantastic discussion for sure, and it would take a lot of intellectual honesty for folks to come to the table and, you know, be in a space where they're free to learn and, express what their thoughts are. Rob and I do that all the time in regards to racial issues and culture and whatnot. And because we have a relationship, I know that he's not asking me things out of, um, being racist or prejudiced. It's like I don't know, and I'm curious, and so I'm asking you so that I can learn. But you have to have relationship in order to do that. The one other thing I was going to say before we move on was, at the end of the day, there are going to be issues that people are going to be dead set, whether it's abortion or gun rights or whatever the case may be. But however you feel, right? Whether I feel like if I come on one side or the other, I don't want you to not be housed. I don't want you and your
right,
family to go hungry. I don't want you and your family not to have health care. So
exactly so.
that I think we're looking at it from the opposite. We're changing the lens in which we focus on things, not on what divides us, but on what brings us together. The things that we
You know, and,
collectively
and the fact
use
is, I
for.
don't care if you own a gun or not. I do care if you use it badly and hurt a bunch of people with it, but I don't care if you own a gun or not. I'm going to say this flat out because I've been feeling the same way since the issue first came out a long time ago. Is I think an abortion is essentially between the doctor and the patient, and I don't think it's any of my business, and I don't think it's any of anybody else's business either. And I know a lot of people will disagree with me about that and scream murder and all the rest of the things, but I personally don't think it's any of my business if a person has an abortion or not, and I don't even know why it's a legal battle, a legal discussion.
But
It
that's the
should
thing,
be it should be a
Ron,
healthcare discussion.
that's your opinion.
That
So
is
we can be
absolutely my opinion. I couch that in saying this is my opinion. This is how I feel.
right. Um, Getting back to it, Michael says looking at a human as a human is an uncommon trait. I think we both wholeheartedly agree with that. Would you say
Yeah,
yes?
and that is the core of where we're heading with the Kitsap Resiliency Project is looking at humans as human beings and looking at actually I'm going to tell a story after this, looking at this as what I call a human centric future. And the funny thing is, I got a diatribe on Facebook about human centric being evil and awful because humans are evil and awful people. And I'm like going, I'm trying to explain to somebody, no, we aren't awful. The culture is awful, but the people are people. And we need to start treating them as human people. And we need to start treating each other. Need to start treating ourselves as human beings. And, I'm going to say this, and it is my opinion, but it's also a core foundation of the Kitsap Resiliency Project, is that our culture is broken. We have a toxic culture, a culture toxic to humans, and we need to change that to be less toxic for humans and more human centric in the way of being about humanity.
I just gotta say, you make me smile every week, Mark, because it's like, we have this conversation like, I know I shouldn't say this, but and then you go down, it's like he's going down there anyway. So it just makes me smile.
Well,
I know I need to, maybe I shouldn't. Here I go. It's so funny.
well, I try to be intellectually honest and open in front, but I am open to people changing my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I just told someone that the other day because I have my own feelings on Juneteenth, and I got new information, and it actually has gone a long way to change my perspective on it, and that's really it. I need to be open minded to be able to listen, to put aside my own biases, but I'm still going to look at it through my value set, and maybe it may change my mind all the way. Maybe it might change some other way. Maybe it won't at all. But I'm willing to actually give it that honest look and really think about it. And I think we've gotten so far away from that. We're in our own echo chambers. We read headlines and not the articles. We don't know how to actually dissect data. That's put in front of us. So they say numbers lie, or numbers don't lie. People do, but you can make the numbers say what they want to, and we just don't have the time to investigate what's true and what's not true. And but I think it really, again, that lens of shifting and looking at the positives and not the negatives, things that bring us together. Yes, we need to address the negatives that are there, but we're so hyper focused on the bad parts of us that we can't make any headway, right? Because that's where we stay. We stay in the funk. We stay in the dark.
Absolutely, and this is exactly why we want to bring people together and hear their stories. The stories won't necessarily change who we are, but they will inform what people need. And we can start realizing that, you think you're all alone, but in 100 people in this room, 70 people and need the same thing.
Hmm.
They may have different ways of saying it, but they have this need. So let's talk about how to get that. The other thing I want everybody to pay attention to is the conversation that Marwan just had, is why Miguel Ruiz and is one of the core pieces of what we teach in our workshops is the four agreements, is because what Marwan just talked about is why you should never take anything personally. People see you through their lenses. They aren't actually seeing you. They're seeing you through their lenses of life and experience. And so they aren't actually responding to you. They're really not saying anything to you. What they're doing is they're responding to what they are perceiving through their filters. And that can be mild filters, and that can be very heavy filters. And until we realize that it's not personal, we can stop being angry about it and just have a conversation and learn to listen.
And I think that requires grace on both sides, right? Because you
Absolutely.
have to be able to suspend what you bring to the table as you are experiencing the event or the person or whatever the case may be.
And that is a behavior that needs to be learned.
That's difficult to do, right? And then give yourself grace, and then hopefully the person you're interacting with can give you grace also, because our emotions are going to come up, right? We are going to take things personally because that's kind of what we do by nature. And so sometimes we may go down a path of taking things personally before we kind of catch ourselves. There's a running joke
Every
uh,
single time.
with my organization where I say no right off the bat. It's like, oh, can we do this? Or what about this? And it's like, no. And I don't say it quite like that, but it's a no right off the bat. But, I will stop and really think about it. And many times it's not a no, it's more of a not yet, right? I just need to take what you've said and find out how it could be applicable. How does it go with the mission, right? And so I will often come back and say, okay, we can do this way, right? But it does frustrate people when I just say no right off the bat. Um, but that's something that has taken a lot of time, and maybe I should just say, well, let me think about it, and maybe, and that's my own issues and my own deficiencies that I have to deal with.
And
Now we can laugh about it because again, we have relationship and community in the organization, to where sometimes they may take it personal, but not as an outsider would. You know what I mean?
absolutely. So we have, it is my opinion that we have spent, and actually that of John Taylor Gatto, that we have spent an entire lifetime in a system that educates us to say no
Mm,
to other people, to not think, to not assess, not to not understand, to not read. And if you want why I have that opinion, look around you, read Facebook for a day, and it comes pretty clear that that is probably a trend. And I'm not even going to apologize for that one.
no, I'm just saying,
Um,
don't read Facebook for a day. You don't even need a day.
so the thing is that if we've been taught this all of our lives in every aspect of our culture, then it is fair to believe that it's going to take us some time to unlearn and relearn new skills.
Mm,
And it's going to take us time to process those skills. And I've been putting together a workshop series for about 4 years now. And we did one last year. And I realized a couple of things. The material is still pretty strong, but it is stronger based on who is in the workshop and who's bringing their pieces of the puzzle to the table. And unless you want to be and to participate and to learn the skills, and you see the need to connect to other people, you shouldn't be in the workshop.
no, that
And
that's interesting, Mark. Let me jump in there because I
but you were
actually
at the workshops.
no, I agree with what you're saying, and what I was going to add to that as kind of a tangible example is if we could take sports or an instrument, folks practice and practice and practice. They have practice games, they scrimmage, and then they warm up and they practice before they even actually have the game or the event. I think we need to do that as we get ready to engage with people that may not think the same way that we do, right? And that needs to happen on both sides. We need to practice being able to put our ego or our biases aside and not come to the table ready to just say, hey, you know what? I haven't had my voice heard. And I just got to make sure that I get in there and my point is understood. You're going to understand how I feel and what I think right now. And when we're coming at it in that way, there's no room for two-way communication, right? You can't decode what that other person is saying and take it in if that's the basis of where you're coming from, right? You're in attack mode or and you're very defensive in that way, so you're going to be guarded. Um, and so the building of relationship, from a barbecue, from the meetings that we have, from the workshops, those things are designed to teach you how to do those things. And again, people are going to fall in different buckets. You're going to have those that are, you're preaching to the choir. You're going to have those in the middle that could be swayed either or, and you're going to have some folks that aren't going to move no matter what. And I think you're talking at the vast majority of the middle, right? And as you kind of build that middle, we're still going to have our value sets. We're still going to, Mark and I feel very differently on a gaggle of things, right? But we're able to respect each other for how we each value and see the world, and then find those ways where we do connect and agree, and then move forward. And it is a very successful relationship that we have. I just wanted to
Uh,
add that on a way to have those conversations because it seems so macro and so impossible to start to change things. But those are the little things that we can do individually in our interactions with people.
So, and I promise you, at the end of, along as you go on this journey, because it's a journey, not a destination, as you go on this journey, you'll find that you're still you, even if you're thinking different things,
Mm.
and you're okay. You'll be fine. It's just a matter of learning and growing, and accepting new truths that help you connect to other people. And to put a fine point on this, I was having a conversation with one of our local politicians recently, and I asked a poignant question. I said, "So, can you tell me how many people come to your office in a month with an ask that might even be a good ask or important, but you can't do anything for them, and you have to be polite and send them on their way?" And the answer was I would need an accountant to figure that out.
Mm.
And then I said, so what if 1,000 people came to your office and had an ask and said, then they would have my attention. So coming together and figuring out what needs to be done to have a better future and coming to some agreements would get the political powers and the governmental powers to start addressing those issues. But until those people come together to have that conversation, it's not going to happen.
In a really prime example, I'm just going to throw her name up there really quick. But I interviewed Marcia Cutting last night from the Kitsap County Accessible Communities Advisory Committee. And 6 years ago, that committee didn't exist. And it only exists in, I think she said, 12 of the 40 something counties here in Washington state. But because she was willing to be an advocate and organize, this does exist. King County doesn't have this program, right? And this program now has free all-terrain wheelchairs for checkout for Kitsap County, so that folks that are need a wheelchair can go to parks and beaches and whatnot. And so that really is the power of coming together, and that's no small thing.
So let me rephrase that a little bit. So
Sure.
Marcia was willing to show up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's amazing what people can do when they show up and when they can bring people together. And again, Marwan nor I own the Kitsap Resiliency Project. I founded the concept, but I founded the concept based on the citizens of Kitsap County bringing their voices to the table and taking ownership of the project. Now, Marwan is on our board of directors, and G2 is a supporter of the project, and Cookies Pet Supplies is a supporter of the project, and Colelo's produce is a supporter of the project. And we have more and more businesses and organizations joining the concept of what we're doing now. So much, in fact, that we're having conversations at the moment about doing something in autumn to bring all the resources together, invite people to come and talk to the people who offer the resources and get a general idea and create a town hall meeting at this event where all of the people who are offering resources can come together and perhaps create something called synergy and figure out how we can provide more together than we could each separately.
I like it.
So these are the things that we're working on, but we really need people to show up and bring their puzzle pieces. The Kitsap Resiliency Project, as I say, we want to map neighborhood resources, and actually that's a state program called Map Your Neighborhood. We want to do a little bit more than they have done with it, but that's basically we want to network people. We want to create a representative unit coming out of the neighborhoods that are basically going to be the representation that takes over the Kitsap Resiliency Project. We want to develop common value-based needs. Basically, we have way more in common than we have difference. And if we figure that out and we sit down and talk about it, we can prioritize the needs and address things like failing infrastructure, like creating jobs. One of the projects that we have on our books that we're working on, is Food for All. If we create the grow centers here and we get the partnerships we're looking to have, we can create 1,000 jobs in Kitsap County and a mini industry and food security. That's a wonderful thing. But we have to have people show up because Marwan and I together probably couldn't grow enough to feed ourselves, let alone anybody else.
What are you trying to say, man?
Hey, dude, you got a brown thumb. So do I.
Oh, I thought you were just saying that I eat a lot.
Oh, no, just neither one of us grow very well.
No,
Um,
no, that's a great example of making an assumption, right? I'm thinking
yeah,
something totally different, and you're like, no, because we both are great growers, right? I mean, that's a great, me bringing my own interpretation of what you're saying, which can
yep.
muddy up conversations, right?
Yeah, and basically, I came out back with the honest answer is that neither one of us can grow it and grow to save our lives.
And we're
So
both joking, which can be taken the wrong way if people don't have that relationship.
right,
So then it
but
becomes
we
a
both
serious
know
thing. It's
people
like,
who
what
do.
happened?
Yeah, but we both know people who do grow. What's that, Billy? We did 11 million pounds of free food giveaway. Hey, tell us about
Yeah,
that, would you, Billy? I'd like
yeah.
to know.
I could tell
Okay.
what Bailey did. So last year, and Bailey, let us know if you're doing that this year. So he had like this 18 wheeler coming to the parking lot, I think next to Planet Fitness, and they had food every single Thursday. And so this is during the height of COVID. You just kind of pull up, you open up your trunk, and I mean it was everything. And they're just filling up people's trunks with food. And yeah, that equaled 11 million pounds of free food last year. So yeah, let us know if you're doing that again, Bailey. So
Yeah.
that was a huge.
And here's one of the things we're pushing out there. Um, I came up with this idea a year ago, a couple 3 years ago, when I was at Marymore volunteering for their concert series, and that's a yes, he is cool. Um, they Marymore doesn't have fixed kitchens; they have food trucks that come for the concerts. And I was sitting here thinking about an event like Cascadia Rising, where roads will be closed, people will be locked into where they're at, and how can we access funds to continue? That's for you, Marwan.
Uh, can we access funds to continue? I don't know how to access the funds to continue that. I know you called me the other day. I was asleep. Are you available tonight around 7? And I'll give you a call.
So anyway, going back to that, is I suddenly realized what a resource food trucks were. And if there's food trucks all around the county and they live in neighborhoods, think about a mobile kitchen being able to feed people. And if we bring the food trucks into an emergency management network, so that they know that when something happens, that they are on call to be part of the network and feed people, that would be a heck of a resource.
Mhm. And that's a lot of food.
Yeah.
That's a lot of food. We were even able to take some of the food and deliver it to folks that needed it. And so they were like, yeah, go ahead and take it. We have, my neighbor is very neighborly. So there are times when he'll allow, someone who's sleeping in their car to park in front of his home. And so I was like, all right, make sure that they get a meal. So we were able to do that. And then what they would do was the perishable items they actually kept in their fridge for that person that was in their car. So it was great. So we fed free food 7 days a week between local shelters for almost 2 years with G2. Yes, yep, absolutely. We did it on Thursdays. Bailey and his family, they did it every single day. Facts, facts. And again, it's I think a lot of people feel like I don't have an organization, I don't have a lot of money. A lot of it is just a willing heart and desire, right? Um, I can't
Or
remember her
maybe
name.
somebody with a garden.
Hmm?
Or maybe somebody with a garden.
Or someone with a garden. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So, Bailey, have you talked to the people over at Blueberry to see if they're willing to donate food? So that's a question, because we have a community garden. We want to expand community gardens. That's one of the things Marwan and I are working on, is to expand community gardens across the county, which will provide food. And anybody who has a neighbor who grows zucchini knows that zucchini propagates more than anything else on the planet. So there's extra food. So you might want to talk to the people over there, the community garden, and or put up a flyer there saying, if you have extra food, contact us, and see, because we're entering growing season now. And maybe you can load up some of the fresh food from there, because frequently gardeners end up with more than they can eat themselves or can.
Well, and relationship builds synergy, right? So right now it's kind of hard time. So normally we get a bread delivery every Monday from one of the local companies, and they haven't been able to do that because they've been stretched thin. However, we get a call from Salvation Army. I got one this morning that said, "Hey, we've got a bunch of bread," And so, which is great that it happened today, because now when we do our food delivery on Thursday, which is tomorrow, not only can we, give them the hot meal, we're also going to give them a few loaves of bread to go along with that, right? And so those are the synergies that can work out. Salvation Army doesn't do that. We do. We can. So that's how that can work. Uh, we're looking for they would be open for sit down.
We'll see. Actually, I may explore it a little bit more. Trouble is that I'm stretched really thin. I've got 7 projects and a lot of things in the foreground, and quite honestly, resilient ecosystems could use some administrative volunteer help because there's a lot of stuff going on that I just don't have time to do. And every day I have to stop and think, okay, which is the foot I'm going to put in front of the other today? But yeah, I'd like to push that forward. I also owe Marwan, and actually probably you at this point, a couple of days of searching grants to see if we can come up with money to fund food programs for the next year. And I haven't done that in a month or so, so I've got to sit down and actually focus on that as well. But we have the Food for All program, we have the Power for All program, we've got the community gathering we're talking about, and the barbecue. So at this moment, I'm pushing really hard. Being resilient is absolutely necessary, and resilient communities thrive. They can depend on each other, but we have to have people go out and shake the hands of their neighbors and bring people together. And we are open in July and August for community ambassadors. So anybody listening here today, go talk to your neighbors, and we will come out and cook burgers.
Yeah,
Fourth Thursday of the month. Fourth Thursday of the month.
And what I would say is that's one of the reasons why we created the pancake breakfast. So, Bailey, if you are available to come on that Wednesday, it's the 4th Wednesday of the month. You know what day that is, Mark? It's the day before the barbecue. What day?
Hold on, I'll tell you in a second.
Well, what day?
This month it is going to be on the 22nd.
The 22nd. So if you can come then, we can actually make that kind of the conversation of the topic of the day. I believe our new buddy that goes around praying for folks on the weekends and handing out food, another synergy because she showed up. We're going to make 25 pancake breakfast meals that she's going to distribute after the pancake breakfast, right? So those are the different ways that we can do things and just expand what we're already doing. In some ways, we don't have to recreate the wheel. We just need to start working with each other to scaffold it up, right? And that's that opportunity.
There's almost a. This is going to be one of those moments where I'm going to say something that people might disagree with, but it's just a flat reality, and I will defend it. Often, nonprofit organizations end up competing with each other instead of cooperating with each other.
That's fact.
Because the way it's set up for funding is that everybody's trying to grab from a very small pot for a very specific and narrow spectrum. And the downside of this, and understand I'm an analyst by nature. So I look at this and I go, okay, so what that ends up being is that a lot of nonprofit organizations spend a whole lot of time chasing money and a little bit of time chasing their mission. And that's tough. And there are a lot of people trying to do really good work, and they end up not being able to do as much as they would like to do. And it's just a reality. There are organizations like Kitsap Community Resources just don't have the money or the resources to do all that they want to do, human or financial. Bremerton Housing Authority, all of these organizations, G2, our organization, Kitsap Strong, all of us end up in the money cycle at some point, and we spend a lot of our time doing something that has nothing to do with what we were founded to do. And if we come together and start having these conversations, which is again why we want to have the community festival in autumn, we can start coming together and discussing this and maybe finding ways to share or support each other's programs so that we can do better all the way around, all of us, and create that synergy. And for those of you who don't know, and I'm not treating you like you're dumb, but it's one of those words that isn't in much use anymore. But synergy is where the outcome is much greater, exponentially greater than the sum of its parts. So Marwan might be able to do X, I might be able to do Y, but together we can do X, Y, and Z. So the whole point is that creating that synergy, that can only happen when people come together and talk in your neighborhood to create resilient communities, in nonprofits to create a greater support network. These are where synergy can happen and where it's vitally needed, and doesn't seem to be in things that we seek anymore. And I'm sorry about lecturing, but this is something I'm very passionate about.
No, but I think folks that are thinking about entering in, and those of us that are in it, we can lose sight of that as we kind of go forward. Sometimes things happen by happy accident. Hopefully, they say luck is opportunity plus being prepared, right? And so I feel lucky by doing the pancake breakfast because that's exactly it. Or as Bailey was saying earlier, when we first started doing so when COVID started, we were cooking in the Salvation Army on Tuesday nights, right? COVID happened, and then boom, that stopped. And it was like, all right, what are we going to do? So we started serving outside, but we only serve meals, every Thursday. And while that's great that people can get a meal every Thursday, there's 6 other days in the week, right? So Bailey's like, hey, we're going to do it every day. So they started doing it every day. Well, we're both serving meals on Thursday. So what do we do? Do we just continue to serve meals every Thursday? Or do we do something different, right? And it's like, oh, well, you do have a transportation company. You do have all these folks that are outside of the downtown corridor that are experiencing food insecurity. Why don't you deliver the meals, right? They've got that cornered. That's how you synergize, right? And it's the same thing with last week at the pancake breakfast, right? We don't have the infrastructure, and our mission isn't boots on the ground, talking with the homeless, or doing a walk with the homeless and praying and doing those things. That's not what we do, right? But now we're working with an agency and folks that do, right, or individuals that have come together to do it. And it's like, okay, you know what? We can make some extra meals that you can take and give, right? That's the synergy, right? That's what you're talking about. So I like to have a tangible example to go with what it is that you're talking about, so people can see what that is. And so you can investigate and see what's happening. We're all providing food, but we're all doing it in different ways, right? And then maybe we come together and look at some block grants and really get some resources in here, because I'm sure a lot of folks outside of the county, those that hold purse strings, have no idea how much food is needed here, and what all the different organizations are actually doing to try to help the people in the community.
Absolutely. And there are people that, I mean, there's not a single organization or person in an organization I have met in a couple of years here, that I don't think is doing the very best they can do, and their heart isn't there, and that their heart is in the absolutely right place. But they're
Yeah,
struggling with a growing problem, huh? What was that, Marwan?
I said you haven't met enough people.
Well, that's true. I tend
Now
to
I got to
focus,
put my cynical hat on. Go ahead. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
but their heart's in the right place. But they are struggling with resources and a growing problem. Everybody is struggling with resources and that same growing problem. It's just a fact. Um, but I had an idea, a thought maybe.
You might have to table that. It's 2 p.m., sir.
Oh God, it is okay. Well, I'm going to do this really quickly. Aaron and Ronnie Smith, Smithshire Farms, run Kitsap Fresh,
Hmm.
which is a central hub for local growers to do CSA deliveries to locations all over the county. They may be a resource if there's extra food left over from those farmers, and they may have a resource out to the farmers to be able to get food for people like Bailey to deliver.
All right. Well, let's take these two statements. There are so many restrictions around grants, funding, donations, etc., put in place by government. How do we get around that or lessen them in order to achieve the synergy you're talking about? I'm going to answer this one, Mark.
Go
So
for it.
one of the things that I do is I sit on like an equity board through Commerce. And Kitsap Public Health had one during COVID, and they are listening to, you know, equity issues. You know what it takes for smaller organizations to, you know, complete an RFP, right? To look at an RFP and then, you know, actually apply for a grant, and understanding that we don't have grant writers on staff and administrators and all these other folks that we can dedicate resources to, and they're actually starting to change how some of the grants are.
Yep.
So that is a big change. And so the more people that can get on to these groups and then advocate in that way and make the change, that's one big one. And Commerce is listening. They have made some massive changes in just a short time. And then Bailey says it's hard when the funds are for entities that are actually doing the work and the program that say they're doing the work. Yep, that's 100% facts, right?
Yep.
And one of the big issues that happens there is, you know, there are infrastructures that they've been doing this since the beginning of time, right? And a lot of times, especially if it's for, you know, BIPOC organizations, they'll say, well, you know what, we can't find a BIPOC organization that does this work. And so they just give it to the same people, and it never gets down to the people that are actually doing the work. And there is another example of the county and KCR saying, hey, we're going to contract with buy-in-fors for eviction assistance because you guys are the ones that talk to your own population. So there is some movement in that. More definitely needs to happen, but it definitely takes strong voices to be at that table to advocate for this is wrong. You need to streamline these things. What you're trying to measure, the outcomes you're looking for aren't the same outcomes that we use. That means something for the people that we actually are working with in the street. So, or
Yeah.
whatever the place may be. So those are kind of the answers to those two questions. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying amen. I'm agreeing with you. The only other thing I would add to that is keep looking at different grants. There was actually one grant that looked really good last year, but I started breaking it down and going through all of the additional information. By the time I did the math, I would end up paying them to take the grant.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like going, yeah, no, this doesn't pencil out at all. But most people don't look at that. They take, oh, look, it's right in my bailiwick, and they grab the grant and they do all the work, and then they find out it's going to cost them money or a whole lot of money.
But that's why the people that have the money have to change the grants. That actually makes
They
sense.
have to make the grants make more sense.
Right. But they're not going to do that unless we're in those spaces. And so we have
Nope.
to,
And
as I always say,
until we come together and have the 1,000 people talking, it's going to continue to be the virtual world. And in a virtual, I mean, it looks like something, but it really isn't.
mhm, power is taken is not given.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to give you the final word really quick. We are 4 minutes over time, sir.
Well, all y'all, thank you for talking to us and being here. Thank you for showing up, and keep showing up, because the more this grows, the more our voice grows, the more we understand your needs, and the more we can try and address them through the Kitsap Resiliency Project as it grows.
Yeah. And I'll just say I want to give an applause because on the Conduit Network, this show, Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces, is the most consistent show on the network. This is episode number 20, and we have not missed a Wednesday. So 20 weeks in a row. So applause to that. All right. Yep. You have a nice day. And, we'll be back. I'll be back in 55 minutes for Bremerton Housing Authority and KCR. So please tune in if you can. Share, subscribe. Make sure that other people have their voices heard. We need all voices at the table.
Yep.
And it's not just for providers, it is for those that are experiencing the needs and the resources that they need to have. Bremerton Council is tonight, budget discussions. If I can find some time, I will cover that, Michael, for sure. So, yeah, for sure. All right, with that, for Mark Boatwright-Frost, Resilient Ecosystems, I'm Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit. We will see you next time.